האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dobra Vietcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Vayishlach. We're going to do Os Yud Beis, section number 12. Before we do, let's take a look at a pasuk from our Parsha. This pasuk comes after Yaakov Avinu has returned home from the house of Lavan. He's now returning home with his wives and his children. And when he reaches Eretz Canaan in the city of Shechem, he sets up a mizbeach. This is Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk Chaf. Vayatsev Sham mizbeach, and Yaakov Avinu set up a mizbeach there. Vayikra lo, and he called to it El Elohei Yisrael, Hashem, the God of Israel. That is the pasuk, and let's see what the Zera Shimshon would like to teach us about and learn from that pasuk. Os Yud Beis, section number 12, Parshas Vayishlach. Medrash Rabbah. And the Medrash, before we start, just want to mention that there are going to be, as often there are, some Kabbalistic ideas in this particular piece. I have to particularly emphasize here, as I always do, that I am not at all knowledgeable about Kabbalistic ideas. I'll do my best to explain the simple words, but there are going to be some definite questions that people will have to understand these Kabbalistic ideas, and unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to explain them. But having said that, let's get going. Medrash Rabbah. Vayikra lo El Elohei Yisrael. So the Medrash Rabbah comments on the pasuk we just read, which is that Yaakov Avinu referred to this altar as not that he was referring to the Mizbeach, but that he referred to the spot of where he put the Mizbeach, El Elohei Yisrael. He said, I'm setting up this Mizbeach to the God, to the El Elohei Yisrael, the God of Israel. Rav Huna b'shem Reish Lakish Amar, Rav Huna in the name of Reish Lakish said, Afilu chazan haKnesses eino notel serora la'atzmo. Even the shliach tzibor, the individual who leads the prayers in the synagogue, is not supposed to take prominence for himself. V'atoha yisa notel serora la'atzmocha. And you, Yaakov Avinu, you took prominence for yourself, and we'll explain what that means in a moment. Machar, so now, then tomorrow, Yotza Bitcha Umisana, your daughter will go out and be violated, and that seems to be a punishment for what Yaakov Avinu did, what the incident with Dinah when she was violated by Shechem. This Medrash seems to be saying that's a punishment for what Yaakov Avinu did. Again, we'll come back to all of this in a moment. Hadohu dichsiv, and this is what's written in the pasuk. Vateitze Dinah bas Leah. Dinah, the daughter of Leah, went out, and of course we know that she went out to see the girls of the city of Shechem, and then the actual Shechem, the person Shechem, the prince, kidnapped her and violated her, etc. Adkan Lashono, until here is the language of a quote from the Medrash Rabbah. So on a simple level, let's just understand what was just said in this piece of this excerpt from the Medrash Rabbah. Basically, Yaakov Avinu seemingly gave an unusual name to when he set up this Mizbeach, and he said, this is a Mizbeach to God, the God of Israel. Well, his name is Yisrael. He is Yisrael. So he seemed to be saying, I'm setting up this altar to the God of Yisrael, of me, my God. And he was taken to task for that, because he should not have taken the prominence for himself. It's as if a person gets up to daven for the tzibor, and after davening, the person says, I'm the one who davened. God, my God answered my tefillos. And that would certainly seem at the least very egocentrical and very arrogant, and is inappropriate for a person to speak that way. And so it was inappropriate for Yaakov to give this name to the Mizbeach, to refer to it as a Mizbeach to the God of Yisrael. And therefore his punishment was that Dinah went out and was kidnapped. That seems to be what the Medrash Rabbah is saying. Let's continue. Hayefei Toar Hiksha. The commentary of the Yefei Toar asks a question. Dezeh Tema. This is very hard to understand. Ma inyan zeh la zeh. what is the connection between one thing and the other thing? Yaakov seemed to give a somewhat inappropriate name or an ill-advised name to a mizbeach. This is the mizbeach I'm setting up to El Elohei Yisrael, Yaakov said, and his daughter Dinah gets kidnapped and violated and raped. What's the connection, the Yefei Toar asks. Then the Zera Shimshon continues with another question. And absolutely, it's true that this medrash requires further explanation. Why did the medrash feel the need to take an example from the shliach tzibor in a synagogue and make the point that a shliach tzibor in a synagogue shouldn't say or act like he's all prominent because of his davening, the success of his davening, and use that as a mashal, as a comparison to what Yaakov Avinu did with this mizbeach? So we have two questions. We have the Yefei Toar's question of what's the connection between Yaakov's statement about the mizbeach, or his naming of the mizbeach, and also we have the Zera Shimshon's question of what exactly is the medrash going for, trying to teach us when it brings in the example of the Chazan HaKnesses, the Shliach Tzibor in the Shul. Next paragraph. Omnam ha'inyan hu kach. Zera Shimshon says, in fact, the situation is as follows, meaning the way to understand this piece in the Medrash Rabbah begins now. I'll begin to explain it to you now. When we appoint a shliach tzibor in a synagogue, in the shul, mishtadlim sheyia adam kosher v'tzadik. We try to appoint a person who is a proper fit person and a righteous person. We don't just randomly send someone up to be a shliach tzibor. We try to ensure that the person is an appropriate and righteous individual. Kedei sheyizku kol hakohol bisfiloso, in order that all of the tzibor of the congregation will be viewed in a meritorious way because of this individual's davening. Kedisnan, as we state in a Mishnah Maseches Tanis, Moridim lifnei hateva, on a public fast day, we send down to the bima to lead the davening, zokein, a person who is an elder, v'chule, etc. The Mishnah over there gives several qualifications as to the type of individual and the type of character the individual must have to be our shliach tzibor on a tainus tzibor, because the tzibor needs to be rescued from a problem. It's a fast day for the tzibor, so we need to send a particularly meritorious, righteous individual. Ve'af al piche, nonetheless, imin hashomayim ya'anuhu bisfiloso, if from heaven this shliach tzibor is answered in his davening, and the problem confronting the tzibor is resolved, Eino notel srora liatzmo, he's not supposed to take the prominence for himself, lomar shezechuso goram, and to say that his merit is what caused the tefillah, his tefillah to be answered. Eliyomar shezchus hatzibor goram lo hasiyua min hashamayim. No, just the opposite. He should say it's the merit of the tzibor that he is davening on their behalf that caused the assistance that came down min hashamayim, from Hashem. So the Zera Shimshon starts in this paragraph with his first building block to talk about what it means for a chazan of a Beis Knesses not to take the credit for himself. And he explains exactly what that means, that even though we do insist upon and we're careful about finding the most righteous and kosher shliach tzibor, especially when there are serious problems confronting the tzibor, nonetheless, if the tefillos are answered, the shliach tzibor should not take credit, but rather should view it as Hashem answering his tefillos on behalf of the tzibor, and it was the tzibor that was worthy for the tefillah to be answered. Next paragraph. V'chan beYaakov, and here with Yaakov Avinu, kishenira elov hakodesh baruch hu b'chalom hasulam. When Hashem had previously appeared to Yaakov, when he had the dream of the ladder, the famous dream of that Yaakov had when he went to sleep, and he envisioned a ladder going up to Shamayim with malachim going up and down. Amar lo, Hashem said to him at that time, Ani Hashem, Elokei Avraham Avicha ve'Elokei Yitzchak. I am Hashem, the God of Avraham, your father, and the God of Yitzchak, v'chule, etc. Ki, now let's go to the top of the next column. Ki lo e'ezovcha, and I will not forsake you, I will not leave you, eis asher dibarti loch, until I have fulfilled everything that I have told you. Dehainu litzarkecha. This means all of your needs and everything you need. I said I'm going to take care of you, and that is true. I will not leave you or forsake you until everything I said. I've watched you, protected you, guarded over you, and made you successful till I bring you back home. Hashem says I'm going to do all of those things for you. Kemoshe Pirish Rashi Sham, as Rashi explains over there. Mashe hivtachti la'Avraham, that Hashem intended to say that which I promised Avraham, v'chule, etc. L'cho hivtachti, to you I have promised it, v'lo la'Esav, and not to Esav. Ad kan l'shono, until here is a quote. So Hashem made a commitment to do many things for Avram, to protect him, take care of him, until all the time he left Eretz Canaan and was in the house of Lavan, and until he returned to Eretz Canaan, Hashem was going to watch over him. And also Hashem was going to make sure that the brachos that Hashem gave to Avram Avinu, that were transmitted to Yitzchak Avinu, would then be fulfilled and transmitted to Yaakov and not to his brother Esav. Umeata, from now, Hashem shmoro baderech, Hashem guarded him on his trip, veheshivo shalem leveis aviv, and returned him whole to the house of his father, to Eretz Canaan. Lo hayulo liYaakov lasos mizbeach. It was not appropriate for Yaakov to set up an altar, velikro alav Elohei Yisrael, and to call it an altar that was going to be used for the God of Yisrael. The mashma mizeh, because this implies shekol hashmira v'ha'ezer, that all of the guarding and the assistance shehayalo that came to Yaakov, haya bizchuso bilvad, it was all in his own merit. Elohayalo lislos zechus hahatzola v'hashmira. Rather, Yaakov Avinu should have made dependent the merit of his salvation and his guarding, b'schus avosav, in the merit of his fathers, dumya dechazan hakeneses hanizkar la'el, and to be similar to the halacha regarding a shliach tzibor in the base knesses. V'zohi temia gedola al Yaakov, and this is a tremendous question on Yaakov Avinu's behavior. And this, of course, is the question that the Yefei Toar posed, that the Zera Shimshon brought down in the name of the Yefei Toar in the first paragraph. So let's make sure we understand what the Zera Shimshon has just explained to us. The Zera Shimshon is saying that Hashem specifically said to Yaakov Avinu, he mentioned, I am the God of your father Avraham and of your fathers Avraham and Yitzchak, your grandfather and your father. And the promise that I gave to Avraham, I'm going to transmit it. It has been transmitted to Yitzchak, and it's going to be transmitted to you, and not to Esav. So all of these things that Hashem said that he would do for Yaakov, all of these things, Hashem made it clear that they were done in connection to Avraham and Yitzchak, Yaakov's forebears, his grandfather and his father. So then Yaakov comes and he sets up in Mizbeach, and he doesn't say, I'm going to daven here to God of Avraham and Yitzchak, to the God of my father, my grandfather and my father. He says, I'm going to daven from this Mizbeach. I'm going to serve the God of who? Of Yisrael. The God of, well, he is Yisrael. I'm going to serve the God of myself, as if it was in his merit. He wanted to thank Hashem because Hashem took into account his merit, seemingly, and that's all he needed to protect himself and for Hashem to do all of the things, the amazing things that Hashem did for him. It was all as if because Hashem was Elokei Yisrael, the God of Yaakov Avinu, without mentioning his forefathers. So the Zera Shimshon says that does appear to be a major inappropriate action on the part of Yaakov. Next paragraph. If we come to answer along the lines of what several commentators wrote, God forbid that we should think it was the intent of Yaakov be'omro when he said, Elokei Yisrael, the God of Yisrael, le'atzmo uvilichvodo, that he was referring to himself in his own glory. Dehainu shehu Elokai Yaakov hanikra Yisrael, meaning that he was saying this Mizbeach is set up to serve the God of Yaakov, of Jacob, hanikra Yisrael, who is also called Yisrael. That, God forbid to think that was his intention. Ela kavonoso, but rather his intention was shehu Eloka Avraham v'Yitzchak, that God is the God of Avraham and Yitzchak, hanikroim afhem Yisrael, who were also included in the name Yisrael. That was Yaakov's real intention. Kede Amrinan b'Medrash Rabbah Reish Parshas Toldos, as we say in the Medrash Rabbah in the beginning of Parsha of Toldos, v'ayin sham, and look over there. If you look over there, you'll see that the Medrash proves through examples that Avraham and Yitzchak are also referred to by the name Yisrael. We do not see that in the Psukim in Chumash. In the simple reading of the Chumash, we don't see that Avram is called Yisrael or that Yitzchak is called Yisrael. We see that Yaakov has the additional name Yisrael added to his name. However, the Medrash over there brings examples to demonstrate clearly that Avraham in certain places is referred to by the name Yisrael, and that Yitzchak is referred to by the name Yisrael. And therefore, these commentators answer this question on Yaakov to say that his intention really was not to refer to himself at all, but to use the name Yisrael and refer to Hashem as the God of Yisrael, meaning the God of Avraham and the God of Yitzchak, which is what he should have done. He was doing exactly what he should have done. Kosher. Then we have a different problem. If that's the case, if we use that answer and we accept that answer, we have another problem. According to this, ein shum tfisa al Yaakov, then there should be no complaint against Yaakov according to this. Shelo chatza klal, he didn't do any sin at all. V'lo notel shum srora liatzmo, and he didn't take any prominence for himself. Yaakov Avinu was completely guilt-free according to this approach that he was referring to the God of Yisrael, meaning the God of Abraham and Yitzchak. V'lama hochicho HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So why would Hashem rebuke him, which we saw Hashem do in the Medrash Rabbah in the first paragraph? Elavadai tzarech lomar, but definitely we need to say, she'af al pi, even though, we're moving to the next page, top of the column on the right. Shekavonoso hayusolitova, even though, according to this approach, Yaakov Avinu's intention was for the good, completely for the good. He wanted to refer to the Mizbeach as the place where he would serve the God of his forefathers, Avraham and Yitzchak. Im kol zeh im shoga. Nonetheless, he made a mistake. Lefisha hashomim yiyu svurim, because the people who heard that this is the name that Yaakov referred to the Mizbeach, sheklape atzmo natal srora, they would think that he was giving honor to himself. He was trying to give himself prominence. They wouldn't realize, the passerby and the people who heard about Yaakov Avinu's saying, this is a Mizbech where I will serve the God of Yisrael, wouldn't realize that he meant Avraham and Yitzchak. They would think he was referring to himself, even though he wasn't. V'lochein mida keneged mida, and therefore there was a measure for measure punishment. Omar lo, Hashem said to Yaakov, mochar bitcha yotza umisana. Tomorrow your daughter Dinah will go out and she will be kidnapped. Shegam shom lefi ha'emes ein shum pegam, because even over there in the incident with Dinah, there was no actual damage done to her, meaning no spiritual damage was done to her, rak klape hashomim, only vis-a-vis the onlookers and the people who heard about what happened to her. And that obviously requires explanation. How can we say that Dina's kidnapping and her being violated by Shechem wasn't damaging to her? How could we say that? So then Zera Shimshon is going to move forward to explain that. But before we go forward, we can understand already what the Zera Shimshon's approach is here, because he's saying to us that there's a midah keneged midah in the punishment that happened to Yaakov with his Dinah suffering what happened to her. It's a midah keneged midah, because just like Yaakov did something that actually was correct, but people thought it was the wrong thing to do, it wasn't appropriate what he did, and Yaakov should have been more careful in his actions because of what people would think. So too with Dinah, the punishment, something that happened to her, was an incident in which it itself, in its own substance, wasn't damaging to her. However, people certainly viewed it as a very damaging incident. And now the Zera Shimshon is going to continue explaining what he means by that and introduced ideas from the Kabbalah. V'hatam sheba'oso masel shel Dina. And the reason that in the incident that happened to Dina, lo hoyu bo shum pegam lefi ha'emes, there was no true spiritual damage to her according to a truthful understanding of the episode. Yuvan, this can be understood. B'masha kosav sefer amudeh ha'shiva. Based on what's written in the Sefer Amudeh HaShiva, B'Shem HaArizal, in the name of the Ari, the great Kabbalist, the Arizal, Shechem ben Chamor HaChivi, Shechem, the son of Chamor, the Chivite, and that is, of course, the person who kidnapped and violated Dinah, Hu HaNochosh HaKadmoni, he was the primordial snake. So we know, of course, of the snake that involved itself with Chava and persuaded her to eat from the Eitz Hadas and to go against Hashem's command regarding the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge. So Shechem was connected to that primordial Nachash. Shehesi says Chava v'hitil bo zuhamo. And the original Nachash persuaded Chava to commit the sin that she committed, and thereby he put into her a zuhama, a contamination. V'lochein nikra hachivi. And that is kind of the hidden meaning to why Shechem is referred to as a chivi. It's not just to tell us his nationality, but rather it's to talk about the deepest core of his being. Loshen chivya. Chivi comes from the Aramaic word chivya, which means a serpent. So therefore, when he's called the chivi, it's telling us he, in fact, is an offshoot of the primordial Nachash. V'al yedei zeh nisarvu neshamos kedoshos bein haklipos. Through this sin of Chava and then Adam with the Eitz Hadas, this caused a cataclysm in the spiritual world in which pure neshamos were mixed up with the klipos, the shells, meaning the kochos hatuma in the world, the impure powers in the world. Ubesocha klipa shel terach hoyanitzois hakodo shel Avraham. Within the impure power of terach, there was introduced the pure spark of Avram Avinu. So Kabbalistically, Avraham could only come from an impure father like Terach, an idolater like Terach, because of this sin, the original sin of Adam and Chava, and eating from the Eitz Hadas, which was brought about through the Nachash, and that caused very holy neshamos, such as Avraham's, to be mixed in with very impure people like Terach. V'serach bo al ishto bimei midosa, and Terach had relations with his wife when she was a nida. had the tumas nida, the impurity of a nida, v'nisgalgalu shnehem lechaparas avonam. Both of them, meaning Terach and his wife, had to be, their souls had to be brought back into other people's to receive kapara for their sins. Terach be'iyov, Terach's soul was brought back into the soul of Iyov. Sha'al yedei hayisurin husra mimenu zu hamas hanida, through all of the suffering, which of course is described in the Sefer Iyov, the book of Iyov, all of that suffering removed from Terach's neshama, the contamination of his Zuhamas Nida, the Ishtonis Galgala Bedina, and Terach's wife, Avraham's mother, her soul was brought into the soul of Dina. Dehainu Nida Shenevchu Ledina. The four letters Nun, Yud, Daled, Hey, which make up the word Nida, can be turned around or reordered into the word Dina, which of course was Dina's name. So this is a hint to us of Terach's wife becoming her soul coming into the soul of Dina in order to receive kapara, in order to ultimately receive atonement. Ucheshebo, last paragraph. Ucheshebo Shchem al Dina, when Shchem had forced himself upon Dina, Sha'av mimena kol hazuhama shel nida. He withdrew from her, he retracted from her all of the contamination of this original Zuhamas Hanida from Terach and his wife, from their intercourse all the way back at the time of Avram Avinu. So when Shechem violated Dina, this had the kind of counterintuitive effect of removing contamination from Dina's neshama. Anyone who heard about what happened thought that Dina had been violated and contaminated, made impure by this action of Shechem. The Adarabah, however, on a deep Kabbalistic level, just the opposite is true. The Fiha Emes, according to the truth, al yedezet nithara, through this she was purified of this tumah that was an original tumah in her neshama. Shesha'av mimena kol hazuhama shel hanochash, because Shechem removed from her all of the contamination of the original primordial nachash, and of course the tumah that came from the neshama of Terach's wife, Kedichsiv, as the pasuk regarding the tumas nida states, usehi nidasa olav, and the nida contamination will be on him, and so the Zera Shimshon says, you see in that pasuk that there's it's alluding to this idea that Shechem brought out the tumah from Dina and it rested upon him afterwards. And this is like what happens when a sa'ir, one of the two goats on Yom Kippur, one of them is offered as a korban and one of them is sent out to the midbar, the sa'ir la'azazel, and that one carries the sins. It's as if it withdraws the impurity of all of Bnei Yisrael. It carries with it the sins of Bnei Yisrael, and so too that's what happened with Shechem. V'hi na'ases nekiya, and she, Dina, was made by this episode into a clean, pure woman. V'Shimon shenis galilo sod zeh, Shimon, who was revealed to him this secret, Shimon understood the Kabbalistic ramifications, the mystical ramifications of what happened to Dina. Lefichach lokach oso lo leisha, and therefore he took her for himself to be a wife. That's a reference to an idea in Chazal that we see. Rashi actually brings it down at the episode of Dina, that she refused to leave the house of Shechem. She said, no one will ever want to be with me, no one will ever marry me. And Shimon, until Shimon promised that he would marry her. and then she agreed to leave and to escape from the city of Shechem. Va'ayin sham, see over there. Uchamoshe Yaakov chota be'enei hashomim. Just like Yaakov did something wrong in the eyes of the listeners, the onlookers, and the people who heard about what happened with the Mizbeach, Gam Dina Bito, so too Dina, his daughter, Lo Nitma'ah, she wasn't actually contaminated, Ela Be'enei Hashomim, but only in the eyes of the people who saw or heard about what happened to her. Vihi Mida Keneged Mida, and this is the measure for measure that helps us understand the Medrash Rabbah that we talked about in the very beginning. V'ayin La'el B'Parshas Vayetze. You can look previously, Zera Shimshon says on Parshas Vayetze, what he wrote, Al Pasuk, on the Pasuk, Ve'onsa bi tzidkasi, my integrity will answer for me. Over there, the Zera Shimshon talks about these ideas in a different context. So to recap, we had two questions in the very beginning. We had the question that the Zera Shimshon brought from the Yefei Torah, which is what is the connection between what Yaakov did in the punishment that happened to in the episode that happened to Dinah, and that of course Zera Shimshon has explained in detail the connection, the Mida Keneged Mida aspect of that, and then we had the Zera Shimshon's own question, which is what did the example of the Chazan in the Beis HaKnesses, the Shliach Tzibur in the Beis HaKnesses, have to really do to the episode with Yaakov, and that also the Zera Shimshon explained as well, as he often does. He answered his second question first and then circled back to answer and explain fully his first question. Yasher Koch to joining us this week and learning the Zera Shimshon on Vayishlach, and we look forward, God willing, to learning in the Zera Shimshon again next week.